Welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. We're going to dive right into a really fascinating investigation into the unseen philosophical rules that govern our everyday reality. I mean, take a second and think about the chair you're sitting on or the device you're holding right now. We walk through the world entirely surrounded by mundane objects and events, and we rarely stop to consider the profound metaphysical machinery operating just beneath the surface, holding the whole shebang together. But today we're going to look a little closer. We're going to explore the invisible architecture of reality itself. Okay, let's dive into this. So, if an object constantly changes, is it still the exact same object? It sounds like a pretty simple riddle, right? But it actually unlocks one of the deepest mysteries in philosophy. Let's say you've got a brown wooden table in your room. One weekend, you decide to paint it white to better match your decor. It looks completely different now. Visually, its qualities have completely transformed. But is it numerically the exact same table? Now, most of us would intuitively say, well, yeah, of course, it's my table, I just painted it. But the moment we separate the superficial qualities of an object from the object itself, we invite this massive intellectual complication. Because what actually makes the table the table? So, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the mystery of change and identity. Number 2, endurance versus temporal parts. Number 3, the search for the cause. Number 4, David Hume and constant conjunction. And finally, number 5, the power of hidden causes. All right, section 1, the mystery of change and identity, qualitative change versus numerical identity.
So, going back to our painted table for just a moment, that was what we'd call a mild qualitative change, an object changing a superficial quality, like its color, while somehow remaining numerically identical, one continuous thing. But let's look at a much more extreme example from the natural world to see just how far we can push this concept before it breaks down completely. Imagine a caterpillar entering the chrysalis phase. What happens to a living organism when it completely restructures its physical form? When a caterpillar enters this stage, it essentially dissolves and completely rebuilds itself.
Just look at how radical this transformation actually is. We are looking at an organism morphing so profoundly that almost none of its original physical characteristics remain. I mean, it loses its old properties and gains entirely new ones. And this raises a massive complication. How can it possibly remain the exact same numerical entity when virtually every single quality it possesses is now totally different? And then bam, here is the final emergence, the completely transformed butterfly. It flies, it has wings, it operates on entirely different biological mechanisms. If an object is literally just a collection of its properties, then shedding all of its old properties and gaining new ones should, technically speaking, mean a brand new object has been created. The profound problem of change is how contradictory properties, like being a crawling leaf-eating caterpillar at one point and a flying nectar-drinking butterfly at another, can somehow exist within one single enduring object over time. I mean, if you listed out the properties of a caterpillar and the properties of a butterfly, they'd look like two completely different animals on paper. How can they mathematically be one thing? Moving right along, section 2, endurance versus temporal parts, two competing metaphysical theories. Now, philosophers couldn't just leave this paradox unsolved, right? So they developed two competing metaphysical theories to try and explain how objects actually survive change. On one side, we've got endurance theory. This is basically our intuitive, everyday view of the world. It argues that an object remains fully and completely present at every single moment of its existence. The whole table or the whole butterfly is entirely there at any given second. But over on the other side, we have this really radical alternative, the theory of temporal parts. This theory argues that objects are actually not fully present at any one moment, but rather they exist as a sequence of connected time slices. Think of a time slice as a 3D snapshot of an object frozen in a single solitary instant of time. To really wrap our heads around this temporal parts theory, let's lean into a cinematic analogy. Think about how an old-school film strip works. You've got individual, static frames. In any single frame, nothing is moving, nothing is changing. But when you play them in rapid, chronological succession, our minds perceive it as fluid movement. Well, the theory of temporal parts views an object's existence exactly like this. You are not one fluid entity. You are an incredibly dense sequence of distinct temporal segments stacked one after another, creating the illusion of a continuous changing whole.
So let's evaluate this philosophical tension for a second. If the temporal parts theory is actually true, and the world is fragmented into these static temporal parts, then true fluid change, it might literally just be an illusion. You're just a sequence of slightly different unmoving slices. But on the flip side, if we stick to the endurance theory, we're stuck trying to explain how a single, enduring object can hold totally contradictory properties over its lifetime. How do the pieces actually connect? Are the transitions seamless, or are we just hopping from one temporal reality to the next? It kind of forces us to look at the continuous flow of our own lives in a totally new way. Are you moving fluidly through time, or is time just projecting different static versions of you, one after another? All right, on to section 3, the search for the cause. From objects to events.
Now, we're going to pivot our investigation a bit, away from objects and focus instead on how events interact. If things change, what actually drives that change? To anchor this rather abstract concept of causation, let's look at a classic, totally tangible philosophical trope: billiard balls colliding on a pool table. When you see a cue ball strike an 8-ball and the 8-ball rolls away, you instantly assume the first ball caused the second one to move. It's just common sense, right? One event forces the next event to happen. We expect it with absolute certainty. But the deeper we dig into this, the more elusive that invisible force actually becomes. Which leads us to section 4, David Hume and constant conjunction, the radical skepticism of cause.
This brings us to a really radical climax in our causal dilemma, courtesy of the philosopher David Hume. Hume introduced a level of profound skepticism that completely shook the foundations of metaphysics. He asked this brilliant, super disruptive question: do we ever actually see a true cause? He introduced a concept called constant conjunction. It's basically the idea that we only ever witness event A followed by event B. We see a sequence, but we do not see a visible causal force. Because event B always follows event A, our brains develop a mental habit of expecting it. But here's the kicker. A habit in your mind is not definitive proof of a driving physical force out there in the real world.
Let's apply Hume's logic right back to those billiard balls. You see the white ball moving. Okay, that's an event. Then you hear a click. That's another event. Then you see the striped ball move. A third event. Hume points out that you never, ever actually observe the invisible power transferring from one ball to the next. You simply observe a sequence of events, and out of sheer habit, you stitch them together and call it causation. You're trusting a psychological expectation, not actual physical proof. Mind-bending, right?
And our final section, section 5, the power of hidden causes, real forces in nature. Now, Hume's skepticism is notoriously hard to completely disprove, but it makes a lot of people deeply uncomfortable. It shifts us to the opposing and, honestly, perhaps more intuitive view, which perfectly illustrates the fundamental split in metaphysical thought regarding events. So on the left, we have constant conjunction. Causation is just a cosmic habit, a series of sequential events that have zero genuine power over each other. But on the right, we have causal powers, the belief that real, hidden forces actually exist within objects, allowing them to produce distinct effects. The universe is actually governed by real, albeit invisible forces. A lot of thinkers firmly argue the case for causal powers because, well, it's just the most practical way to navigate, predict, and survive in our reality. Think about medicine for a second. If someone takes a pill and is cured of an illness, we desperately need to know that the pill possessed the actual causal power to fight the disease. We need to know it wasn't just that taking the pill and getting better are a habit of sequential events. We have to push past mere visual observation. Objects absolutely must possess real internal properties capable of producing effects. Because if that medicine has no real internal properties, no actual causal powers, then modern science is kind of an illusion. We must believe the universe is built on a foundation stronger than just random, unconnected coincidences. And that brings us to the end of our intellectual journey today. We've explored how objects endure through radical, crazy changes, and we've debated whether the events driving those changes are powered by real forces or if they are just mere habitual sequences. So, as you go about your day today, I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Look around you. As you watch a door close or a car start or even just a leaf fall to the ground, are you observing real hidden forces at play, or are you just witnessing a cosmic habit? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the reality around you.